Still, 9 people is way too many. Are we all going to get along and play baseball or something? Ever since I was a child, I had harbored a dream. To live in a charming house like the ones in picture books and to play with a white dog in the garden. But reality was not so kind. Though I finally acquired a house of my own, when I returned from work, it had transformed, almost like a dormitory. I couldn't forgive what had happened. My name is Janet, a 32-year-old office worker. I had devoted myself to my job and worked hard. However, towards the end of my 20s, my friends started getting married one after another. I even went broke from the expenses at weddings. Gradually, I began to feel a sense of urgency and started to actively seek a partner. Janet, when will you show me grandchildren? My father would ask me the same question every time I visited home. Because of this, I grew reluctant to return, and my visits became less frequent. My mother passed away when I was young, and afterward, I was raised by my father, my brother, and my paternal grandparents. My brother married young and built his own house near our childhood home. He has 2 daughters, who are dear nieces to me. You have 2 adorable grandchildren already, so why do I need to have children? But still, you are. Each time, it turned into an argument. Then one day, my father had a traffic accident. By the time I arrived at the hospital, the situation was already severe, and my always energetic father passed away peacefully while our family watched over him. Dad, there was someone I wanted to introduce to you. At that time, I had a partner I met through friends. Recently, he had proposed and we had decided to get married. He tended to put on airs, but he was a kind-hearted person. His name was Steve, having lost both parents and my brother having his own new family. It's going to feel a bit lonely, isn't it? After the funeral, back at home, I murmured such thoughts while stroking my cat, Candy. You're not alone, Janet. From now on, I'm your family. Steve, who was beside me, said that, taking my hand gently. He was concerned about me and came to check on me. Let's build a happy family together. I believed I could have ordinary happiness. At that time, I couldn't even imagine what would happen next. Welcome, though it's a bit cramped. We were welcomed by Steve's parents when we visited for me to introduce myself to them. His mother was very active and cheerful. I felt a bit nervous as soon as I entered the room. I thought we would be meeting just his parents, but there were also his grandparents, Steve's brother, his wife, plus their 2 boys. Nice to meet you. There were so many people. Steve's family home, built by his grandfather, felt a bit old and run down. To be honest, it seemed quite ancient. However, his family welcomed me warmly despite my nervousness. On our way back, I said to Steve, there were so many people today. It must be even more chaotic during holidays and Christmas. He laughed and replied, really, it's cramped. I wonder how they manage to live there every day. I was genuinely surprised by his comment. Steve's family home wasn't particularly spacious. I had thought it was just coincidentally crowded that day. Wow, 8 people in that house. That's impressive. According to my husband, initially, it was just his parents and grandparents, 4 people living together. But one day, his unemployed brother suddenly moved in with his wife and kids. Well, I guess he'll move out once he finds a job, my husband said with a laugh. At that time, I just thought it must be tough for his family. Since getting married, we haven't been blessed with children, but we live a leisurely life with my husband and our cat, Candy. My husband helps with the household chores, and Candy is fond of him. Some time has passed since our marriage, but my brother-in-law's family still lives in the same house. The walls are filled with children's scribbles, and my mother-in-law has accepted the situation, laughing it off as a joke. Vanessa, my brother-in-law's wife, always looks tired. She is older than my brother-in-law and close to my age, so we developed a good relationship quickly. Hey, Vanessa, hurry up. Janet, don't just watch, we're out of beer. When I visit my in-laws, Vanessa and I are usually the only ones moving around. We were constantly busy, hardly having a moment to breathe. I wondered if this was the fate of a daughter-in-law, but thinking about Vanessa facing this daily was genuinely frightening. Since my brother-in-law doesn't work, Vanessa works full-time. It might be a bit rude, but I asked her, have you ever thought about divorce? Yes, it's quite tough as it is, but I have kids. He used to be much kinder. I couldn't understand what she saw in my brother-in-law, but there must be something between them that only they know. It was during such times. Hey, should we start thinking about building our own house? One day, my husband suggested. I was surprised by his words, but also felt joy inside. In fact, I've had a small wish since I was a child. To live in a lovely house like those in picture books and to raise a white dog in the garden. I had never told anyone, but I did share this dream with my husband, hiding my embarrassment. That sounds great. He responded enthusiastically. Then we spent time visiting model houses and selecting a home builder, and after a year, our dream home was completed. Let's work hard on the mortgage payments. My husband said, "Yeah, that's right," I replied with a smile. On the first weekend after our house was completed, my in-laws came to visit as a housewarming gesture. "Here, Dad, give them the celebration gift. Excuse us." "Oh, what a lovely home," my mother-in-law said, looking quite pleased as if it were her own home. As I gave a wry smile, my father-in-law said, "Here, this is for celebration," and handed me 2 cans of beer that seemed to have been bought just then. "Is this all?" My brother-in-law wandered around the house, went into the bedroom on the second floor, and exclaimed, "Bo, this bed is so comfortable," as he jumped onto it. Since the father did that, the kids also got excited, running around and shouting, "There's a cat." The children chased our cat, Candy, throughout the house. Candy, usually a loving cat, was overwhelmed by so many people and hid in a corner of the room. "I'm so sorry, Candy." Looking over at my husband and brother-in-law, they had already started drinking with my in-laws. "Janet, mother-in-law, is rushing for snacks. Can I use the kitchen? And I'm really sorry for scaring the cat," Vanessa said, apologizing. How can such a nice person be in that family? I empathized with Vanessa as if she were my own sister. "I'll do it, so you take a break, Vanessa." I said that, but Vanessa helped with the cooking while taking care of the kids. Steve's grandparents are always quiet and don't talk much. They were as silent as dolls, yet they commented, "What a wonderful home you have." "Really? We're sorry for being so noisy." It was Steve's parents who were noisy, yet the 2 of them apologized. His grandparents were very polite people. Ultimately, the problem seems to involve Steve's parents, his brother, and probably Steve himself. After that, Steve's parents and brother started visiting our house almost every weekend. They would party loudly until late at night, causing complaints from neighbors, and the police even showed up once. Steve's grandparents and Vanessa, along with her children, haven't visited our house since the housewarming, but Steve's parents come without hesitation, often leaving me with tasks to do. My patience finally reached its limit. Steve began to show his true character gradually. Once, when I was sick with a cold and couldn't cook dinner, I asked Steve, who returned home from work before me, to buy something for dinner on his way back. What Steve brought home was 2 servings of fried chicken. With no appetite, I reflexively said, "Why fried chicken? I can't eat this right now." Without getting angry, Steve replied, "What are you talking about, Janet? You need to eat properly and get better, especially now." If I could eat that, I wouldn't have asked in the first place. I thought to myself. Later, when Steve fell ill, I asked him with a hint of sarcasm, "Do you want fried chicken?" He replied, "No, that's obviously not going to work. What are you thinking?" He laughed as he said that. In the end, this family is selfish and lacks consideration for others. It's as if they've lost their humanity. They can do as they please now, but there will come a time they'd regret it. I decided that in my heart and smiled slyly. A few days later, it was decided that I had to go on a business trip. On the morning of my departure, "I'm off then," I cheerfully said to Steve. "Is your business trip starting today?" "Actually, Vanessa is also on a business trip starting today," he mentioned. "Really? I had no idea." "What a coincidence," I replied, to which he laughed. "My parents are in trouble because they don't have anyone to help around the house." Seeing him laugh, I thought to myself, this man is terrible. Days passed busily while I was away, and a major storm hit. I asked Steve about the situation. I'm fine, but the family home had some leaks due to the rain. He responded. I felt resigned thinking about the aging family home. The day I returned home arrived. As I approached my house from the station, I heard loud laughter. I wondered if someone was having a barbecue in their yard. It was so noisy that I thought it might cause complaints from the neighbors. Then I was shocked to realize the loud voices were coming from my own home. Hesitantly, I opened the door to find a multitude of scattered shoes and walls filled with scribbles. Stunned by this unexpected scene, Steve, already drunk, greeted me. Oh, Janet, you're back. Angered by his blatant disregard, I stepped into the living room to find Steve's parents and brother also inebriated, with Vanessa busily preparing snacks for them. Steve's grandparents remained as calm as ever, while the children used the walls as their canvas, happily drawing. There was also an unfamiliar young woman present. There was too much information to process. I couldn't organize my thoughts. What exactly is going on here? I tried to have a calm conversation with Steve, asking him quietly, What? Didn't I tell you? The storm caused a leak in the family home. He replied, I understand that, but why here? According to Steve, the family home was severely affected by the storm, and our house was chosen as the refuge for his family. While Vanessa was on a business trip, Steve, his parents, and his brother discussed the next steps. We all thought it would be great to live here together. Steve proposed proudly. What? I couldn't grasp what he was explaining. While I remained silent, Steve's parents cheerfully said, We're family, and there's enough space, so it's fine. There's no problem, Janet. Sure, the walls are a bit dirty, but that's just the kids doing. My brother-in-law stated nonchalantly. Who is that woman? I asked about the unfamiliar woman relaxing on the sofa. Oh, her? She's a friend of mine and Vanessa. My brother-in-law turned to Vanessa for confirmation, and she smiled kindly, saying, Yes, that's right. She got kicked out of her place, and when she asked for advice, my brother said it was okay for her to stay here. My brother-in-law explained, Nice to meet you. The woman responded, but I was completely lost. In the not-so-large living room, there were 9 adults and 2 children. The house was messy, and the walls were covered in scribbles. It was hard to believe this was a new home. The family was loud, creating an atmosphere like a dormitory. I became furious at the situation. Still, 9 people is way too many. Are we all going to get along and play baseball or something? Then, I realized something. Wait, where's Candy? Our beloved cat, Candy, was nowhere to be found. When I asked Steve and the others, everyone claimed they hadn't seen her. As I searched for Candy, my nephew informed me, well, when Grandpa opened the window to smoke outside, Candy just slipped out. My brother-in-law glared at his son, who shared this information, as if he was saying something outrageous. Why would you do that? I've told you to be careful when opening the windows. I said, tears welling up. To that, Steve indifferently replied, well, if it's about a cat, we can just get a new one. Why are you making such a fuss? If you want a divorce, that's fine by me. Steve said this with a smirk. I challenged his provocative attitude. Did you just say divorce? Yeah, I did. If you're willing to apologize, maybe I'll reconsider, he replied. How he and his family could be so confident, smirking proudly, was beyond me. However, calmly I said, is that so? Then sign this, presenting the divorce papers already signed by me. I went to retrieve my packed bags from the room and told Steve calmly, have you signed it? Why haven't you signed it yet? I'm busy, you know. My preparedness surprised Steve and his parents. As Steve struggled to hide his irritation at my provocation, his mother exclaimed, Steve, divorce this foolish wife quickly. The house is completed. We don't need her anymore. You'll regret getting divorced. Steve remarked, but there was nothing for me to regret. What are you talking about? You're the one who'll be in trouble. Just sign the divorce papers, I responded. After ensuring Steve signed the divorce papers, I stored them in my bag, then approached my brother-in-law, presenting another set of papers. Please sign this as well. What? When did we get married? My brother-in-law, laughing, looked at the filled-out wife section. Hey, Vanessa, this is Vanessa, with a cold gaze, urged him to sign the divorce papers. We're getting a divorce. Please sign it quickly. Vanessa, this betrayal is unforgivable. My father-in-law condemned, but Vanessa remained resolute in her decision. Even I could see that Vanessa was treated like a domestic worker in her own home. Most of the income she earned was handed over to her husband, except for a small amount allocated to household expenses. He squandered that money as he pleased, and the unknown woman sitting on the sofa turned out to be his mistress. Janet, it seems my husband is having an affair. Vanessa confided this to me just before Steve proposed building a house. Prioritizing her children, Vanessa had endured in silence. However, she recently discovered that her husband was selling her personal belongings and even the children's toys to profit for himself, pushing her to her breaking point. Then Vanessa shared something with me, igniting my anger. From that moment, we began working towards our divorces. Vanessa focused on gathering evidence of the affair. The business trip she mentioned earlier was actually a lie. We met at the station and went to look for a new place to live. Like me, Vanessa had no parents to turn to but decided to move out of the state based on a job offer from a close friend she had confided in. It was a very pleasant location. Everything went according to plan, and we were at the final step, submitting the divorce papers. I want to take some people out of that miserable place, Vanessa resolved with renewed determination. I saw the strength hidden inside her. Despite appearing fragile on the surface, she possessed a strong heart, suppressed and almost brainwashed by her in-laws' harsh treatment. We staggered our return home, with Vanessa going back first. She informed me that our home had been effectively taken over and my brother-in-law's mistress was living there openly. All our interactions had been an act, fully aware of the circumstances. I told Vanessa, you don't have to live there anymore. Let the kids enjoy drawing on the walls as much as they want. Seeing my brother-in-law contentedly signing the divorce papers while imagining his new life with his mistress, I felt a cold satisfaction. Let's go, Vanessa. Grandpa and Grandma, please come with us. I called them out, and they stood up, guiding Vanessa and her children to the entrance. I thought staying with you people would ruin our lives. Vanessa's words woke me up. Do as you please from now on, Grandfather coldly told the rest of family while making their way out. It turned out the rest of the family had been dipping into the grandparents' finances as well. Such unforgivable behavior. Goodbye, take care. As we left, they laughed, saying, you will regret this. But we ignored them, gathered our belongings, and left the house. Months later, I received a call from my ex-husband. Oh, I forgot to block his number. I had a good idea of what the call was about, but when I answered, a frantic Steve said, Janet, come back. I couldn't help but laugh. Come back? We're strangers now. I replied calmly, only for his mother to snatch the phone. What do you mean? Why aren't you paying the mortgage? Excuse me? I don't understand what you're talking about. I feigned ignorance, and she couldn't hide her irritation. It turned out the mortgage was already in arrears. My ex-husband was claiming I was responsible for the missed payments, which was absurd. While I stayed silent, the mother-in-law ranted nonstop. What's this house? You said your household income was $75,000, right? We should have had a much better home. It's so disappointing for a newly built home. They had planned to acquire that house from the beginning. Vanessa had informed me of my husband and in-laws scheming. Indeed, but with your son's annual income of $30,000, the bank wouldn't lend much. If we had taken out the mortgage jointly, maybe we could have built a better house. Hearing this, the mother-in-law shouted, Steve, what's this about? This isn't what we discussed. I could hear my ex-husband and former mother-in-law arguing over the phone. Ignoring that, I hung up the phone and made sure to block his number. My ex-husband always wanted to appear favorable in others' eyes, though not so much with family. But his desire to be seen positively by outsiders was abnormally strong. When I mentioned building a house, I had already been contemplating divorce. Unbeknownst to my ex-husband, I provoked him by saying, a friend's husband took out a mortgage by himself. That's impressive, isn't it? Perhaps wanting to make a good impression on the banker, he decided to take out the mortgage himself. It was hard to contain my laughter. He must have been terrified to reveal the truth to his family, but for me, it was a trivial matter. The house that was built disregarded my preferences and was based on my ex-husband's tastes. Hence, I had no attachment to that house. Since my ex-husband didn't cheat, I didn't receive compensation after the divorce. Angered by this fact, I left him with the burden of the mortgage as a form of revenge. I thought he deserved to suffer. Moreover, being able to take Vanessa, whom I considered like a sister, out of that house was my greatest victory. Eventually, the mortgage payments became impossible, and the new house was foreclosed. The interior was covered in graffiti, and the walls were stained yellow from the cigarettes smoked by my former brother-in-law and his mistress. The house was in a state of disrepair, far from what one would expect from a new home. My ex-husband rented a cheap room, but I heard that my former in-laws also moved in with him. It seems he will never be free from them. They are now strangers to me, so I'm not concerned about their fate. The only redeeming quality of my former in-laws was that they didn't harm the children. Other than that, they were the worst kind of people. Vanessa, my former brother-in-law's ex-wife, pursued compensation through legal means against him and his mistress. It appears they managed to pay the amount by borrowing from acquaintances. This was welcome news. The incident made them outcasts in the community, and now their whereabouts are unknown. They haven't repaid their loans, causing dissatisfaction among those they owe. Vanessa is now living fulfilling days working at a friend's company. Her children are growing up healthily, and I wish her all the happiness in the future. My former grandparents seem brighter, as if a burden has been lifted, enjoying a new life with the funds from the sold house and their secret savings. As for me, I requested a transfer to a local office. Surprisingly, my beloved cat Candy is with me. After sharing information about Candy on social media, I found out that a local person had been caring for her. I'm so glad Candy is a friendly cat. Now, I live alone in the house my late father built in my hometown, and with my brother's approval, I'm close to saving enough to build my own home. I hope to introduce someone special at my father's grave someday, and I continue to work hard every day.